Welcome to episode number 2, SS2. This is going to be a combat veteran named Kip. He's going to share his story about his life, his struggles, and things he did to improve the quality of his life. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right.
You want to get started? I want to break the ice. I feel like we did that. Everything's going pretty good. Let's just jump
Yeah, let's go.
into it.
Let's get it rolling.
All righty. So right now, I'm talking with Kit, good friend, badass. We're just going to go down the list. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from. Make a little connection with it.
All right. Well, let's see. Where do I come from? Born and raised in Washington State, Pacific Northwest.
Very cold.
Born in Seattle, raised in a small town. I'm older than you. I don't know that I'm old, but I'm older than you. Yes.
Yeah. I'm like
But
Gandalf old.
nah, not quite Gandalf old. Every once in a while I feel Gandalf old, but yeah, definitely a little older. Turned 42, turning 42
Nice.
in August. But I would say pretty typical childhood. Typical America is pretty varied.
Right.
Both parents around till high school, and then mom and dad decided to divorce.
Yeah.
Played sports growing up, basketball, baseball, football. So yeah, pretty normal. And then obviously joined the Air Force at 22. That's where I met your goofy ass, and then we just did amazing things. Did that for 12 and a half years. The body started breaking down a little.
What led you to the military? Like, I don't know. I feel like we all had a moment, and I was like, yeah, I want to go do that. Like, mine was unique in a way, but what was yours? Like, when did you decide, like, yeah, I'm done with this college thing, and I want to do some military action.
So my great grandfather, not great grandfather, my grandfather was a World War II vet. And right out of high school, 17 years old, the Navy was recruiting me pretty good because I had good ASVAB scores. Thought about joining the Navy, but all they wanted me to do was submarines. And I just have this thought process that, like, if I'm on a boat and a boat sinks, I can swim. But if a submarine sinks, like, it's a do not pass go. You don't win that battle. Like, so I didn't want to be on a submarine. Wouldn't looked at the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps pissed off my mom. That was a pretty bad option on their part because I was 17. I couldn't sign the paperwork. I needed her to sign the paperwork.
Right.
And the Marine Corps screwed that up. And then the Navy kept harassing me. And then on my 18th birthday, I had a bunch of friends over. We're barbecuing, just hanging out. And the Navy called, and I was like, look, it's my birthday. Like, I got friends over. I'll call you, like, Monday. And they're like, well, what time? I'm like, I'll just call you on Monday, or I'll come in. Like, it's not a big deal. And the guy would not leave me alone. And I'm like, dude, fuck that. So I didn't join the military at 17 or 18. But I was working at Mervin's, an apparel store, and I was doing their logistics. I was their logistics manager. So I unloaded trucks. I put their product out on the floor. It was an okay job. It wasn't the greatest job, but it was a solid job. Met a lot of cool people. And I was working one day on the floor around the holiday season. And before I worked at Mervin's, I worked at McDonald's. And one of my former employees, her name is Sheena, she came walking in, and she's wearing this, like, this bus driver outfit. And I'm like, whoa, like, what are you doing? Sheena's really short. She's like 5 foot tall. And I'm like, you're not tall enough to drive a bus. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, I joined the Air Force. And she was going to college, and she was doing all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow. I'm like, well, hey, I got lunch in an hour. I'd love to take you to lunch and just catch up. So I went to lunch and talked with her. And she was talking about how she's, working She's making money and she's going to school. And I was having some issues with the store manager at the store that I was at. He's a young guy, like 24 years old, fresh out of college, and he was the boss and he had a degree. And he was like very just inappropriate with some of the girls. I mean, you think about retail, it's very much a female, female driven, not really driven, a lot of females work in retail.
Right.
So I was closing one night with him, and there was a girl that worked for me that I've known since she was, I don't know, like 14. She was a cheerleader with my sisters, and we were finishing off the jean wall, like making it look nice and doing, the stuff that you do in retail. And he was tall, she was short, and he like reached like over the top of her. It was just completely inappropriate. And
right.
She kind of gave me a look, and I was like, wow. So I pulled him aside and like, hey, like what you did is not remotely acceptable. Like,
right.
That's not okay. It's not okay. And he's like, oh, it's fine. And man, so I started doing some like kind of looking into the matter, and he basically had never had a job. This was his first major job. Daddy had paid for everything. Mm-hmm. But he was the boss, not based on his experience. He was the boss based on his degree. He had a degree, and I didn't have a degree. I had way more experience, but he had a degree. So, Sheena comes in, talks to me about, she's going to school and she's doing this. And I'm like, man, like I can't go to school full time and work full time and pay my bills and be responsible. I just couldn't, like the math just wouldn't work out. And so I decided to go talk to the recruiter. And, this is 2002, so it's a year past 9/11. There's, stuff still going on in the world. I had thought about serving obviously 5 years earlier. And then I was like, you know what? Like, it's time to do something better. And then also to go get that degree and kind of, I guess, make sure that other, girls in retail aren't sexually harassed. So I joined. It took me 11 months to get into the Air Force because of they didn't have an opening. And then I chose this job of EOD, and I didn't have a slightest clue what it was, but
that's exactly what I did. And I remember at the recruiter office, they're like, you can be like this math thing, because like my scores were great, and I was like, that sounds boring as shit, and then they're like, well, there's a linguist, and I was like, what? And then they like gave me the description of EOD, and I was just like, yeah. I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, are you messing with me? Like, and they're like, no, it's a real job. But that's funny. So when did you realize going through the military, like EOD was maybe a little bit something different?
I would say that I realized it was different, like even in prelim back in the day at Medina. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what EOD was. My recruiter called me after I selected my job. My recruiter says, hey, what do you want to do in the military? And I said, I don't know. I get bored really easy. So like, give me something that's not boring. And she looked at me and she goes, that's what you want me to write? And I'm like, yeah, like just something interesting. So when I got called in down in MEPS, which is an hour and a half south of where I was living, I did all the testing, and then they're like, so it says you get bored easy, you want something interesting. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And so, they offered me a couple jobs, and they required jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. And I was like, nah, I don't want to jump out of an airplane. Like, yeah, but you wouldn't be bored doing that. And I'm like, yeah, but you also might die. Like, yeah. And then they handed me EOD, and it said explosives and nuclear and chemical. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool as hell. And the guy goes, you don't want to jump out of a plane because you're going to die, but you're okay with explosives? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, it's cool. So when I got to prelim, I kind of noticed EOD was different. The instructors were obviously, pretty intense. but they kept making comments about how well our class worked together. And I thought that was kind of odd. And at the time, we were with the 342nd Training Squadron, and the PJs and the CCTs and the SEER guys were all there. And those guys were like running off early in the morning, getting sprayed with hoses, but they had to stick together as a team. And, you know, we were working as a team, and there was a few times the instructors tried to take that stupid doll that we had to hold on to, the Murphy doll.
Yeah.
And they tried to teamwork it, but they couldn't out teamwork us, kind of thing. And I just had a feeling that EOD was different. And then as I was kind of going through the prelim course, I found out very quickly it wasn't about overthinking. Like, it was about, like, if you open it, you close it. And it's like, if you see this, don't do this. And I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. Like, you know, you see a rattlesnake, you don't try to pet it, right? Like, you're taught that. But, you know, as I was going through class, you know, the instructors were like, hey, you got to study hard. But if you see this, don't do that. And it's like, well, this makes sense to me. Like, it's common sense, and it's just a matter of applying common sense. So that was when it first kind of showed me it's different. And then the next time was probably in ground ordnance division. I was having I don't know, I will say it might sound bad, but I was having pretty easy go at EOD school. I hadn't failed a test.
Right.
I'm in ground, you know, like, I think I had almost a 99% average. And then I get to ground, and I just had a really bad prac day. And there was a Navy chief named Chief Oliveira. And oh my God, it's raining. And it's raining. And I got to my safe area. I'm calling out all these safety. I'm a soup sandwich. And I don't know what was going on. Like, I know what it was. I had failed my first test. I failed the ordnance ID test. I failed it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at you. You're a big dummy. And I started to have some doubts. So we go into prac. I completely suck at prac that day. Like, just like, it was bad. I got put in the thinking position, in the sand, in the rain. I'm like sinking. He's yelling at me for moving. Our lightning rolled in. Our problem got postponed. We got sent to lunch. We came back from lunch. I was still like just a fucking soup sandwich. Like, it was bad. And started to have doubts. And then he like walked me out into the woods with a giant stick. And I'm like, I'm going to get like beat up. Like, that's what's going to happen. And he pulled me aside, and he goes, you know, I pulled your records. And he's like, you're not a fucking idiot. He's like, you're actually a pretty smart kid. He's like, you know, what the hell's going on? And you know, kind of gave me this like speech. And then he probably said probably one of the more important things in my life. He goes, you see this badge on my chest? And I was like, yes, you know, yes, chief. And he goes, this badge isn't given. This badge is earned. He goes, if you want it, you have to earn it. He goes, I'm not giving it to you. He's like, so whatever the hell's going on in your head, you better figure it out and come back tomorrow and earn your badge. And that kind of stuck with me. And it kind of showed, you know, like, he knew I was smart, and he didn't have to take me out and give me a fucking pep talk, but he saw that something was a little off. And so he evidently valued me enough as a student to, you know, kindly motivate me with a, you know, little bit of a fucking pep talk. And then, you know, obviously I actually had a hiccup in air. I double tapped in air. And as soon as I double tapped, I was like, oh my God, I'm out, right? Because back in the day, you know, that's what it was. You double tapped, you were done. And
I double tapped in core.
I went.
But
yeah, so I went all the way down to that horrible fucking bench that we had to sit on and wait to get called into the training office. And I was the last person Yeah, I was the last person to get called in because, of course, my last name starts with W. And got called in, and the guy's like, all right, you're going to go back to day one air, and it's going to take me a while to get you in because we don't have a lot of openings. And I looked at him, and I'm like, what'd you say? He's like, yeah, day one air, you're getting an auto roll. And I'm like, an auto roll? And he goes, oh, but you have to report to Chief Oliveira in ground every day that you're on academic holds. And then you'll do study hall after you work for Chief Oliveira. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know that this is, I'm like, I rolled in air. Why would I go work for the guy in ground? But he didn't care. And then, I would say that it was hazing, but
I like
it's
to
the reason I'm an EOD guy. Yeah, I did some. I did a lot of very redundant tasks, but there was a lesson to be learned there, and I got through it. I survived. I didn't die, so I can't bitch, and that's kind of what happened. And then obviously, I asked Chief Oliver to pin me a few months later when I was officially in EOD Tech. So, yeah, that's when I knew EOD was different. Oh, it's windy out here. I better go back inside.
Yeah.
Walk out. Done.
Chief Oliver and I, we had a moment in ground also. We did, I don't know, what was hand zing, 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 And I was like, boom. And I was like, instructor, what do I see? And he's like, what do you want to see? And I said something very inappropriate. And he laughed, but then he reamed me and just absolutely smoked the shit out of me. That's hilarious. And he's like, don't do that again. I was like, yes, chief, which is in line with me, I was always obnoxious when I could be. And then, who's it? Gunny Sims, I think. Yeah, he gave me my testing ground, and I had one of those moments with him. If it wasn't for an instructor giving you a solid, it seemed like it was really hard to get through UD school. But he gave me a solid, and it was an extra 15 minutes because I'm retarded. I struggle with computers because I'm from the South. We didn't have a lot of computers, I think I took a typing class, and it was like that's like the equivalent of what my experience was with a computer. And then I was searching for a rocket, and I had it in meters instead of inches. And finally, he walks over and he's like, "I ain't ever seen a 2.75-meter rocket." And I'm like, "I'm fucking retarded." And then I go out there and he just stopped me. He's like, listen, he's like, there is zero chance of you finishing this problem. He's like, you don't have enough time to do it. But he's like, if you can make a shot from Murphy, the fucking statue that was out there, or like the little Murphy display, he's like, if you can make a shot from there, I'll give you 15 more minutes. And I was like, all right. So they threw me a ball, all the classes out there staring at me, I just launched it. I was like, all right, let's go. And I just turned around before it even went in. It was nothing but net. And he was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I was like, let's get this going, So yeah, UD school was fun. And then after that, we all met up. We're at Luke, and then that's when things get.
Luke Air Force Day, 2003, buddy.
Yeah. And I gave you the perfect example of an airman to be. I think that's why you're so successful.
Yeah, that's how I remember it too. That's exactly how I remember it.
I love it. Yeah. No, I just think that there's a few airmen that gave us the example of what not to be there. So by the time we got there, it was like I think you and I both were the quickest ones to get certified to go downrange. And then we got after.
Yeah. I saw people, and I don't know if I'll ever listen, but I saw people like Caton, and I wanted to not be that airman. He was a senior airman, and he just seemed lazy. And I'm like, I don't want to be known as the lazy airman. And we had a good group of young guys. And then obviously, I got there in December, and then that February we got told that we were going to Iraq. And in theory, I wasn't qualified because I wasn't a 5 level. I hadn't completed my CDCs. Our training manager at the squadron was horrible. And so, when we got told that
in Baghdad,
we took our CDCs in country, bro.
that's what I thought. I remember taking that. I totally forgot that until just now, taking those freaking tests in between ops. And I was like, who gives a shit about shooting right now?
They could not get our, the training manager was worthless. Remember, Taylor, I think his name was. And he screwed up all of our paperwork. And and then on top of that, I finished like the first volume of my CDCs in 6 days, and he told me I had to take all 30, and I was like, nah, give me my next one. So I think it was actually Tim Barry called over and said, give him his damn CDCs. But we took our tests in country because they couldn't get it done. And the more I think about it, Tom wasn't qualified, I wasn't qualified, you weren't qualified, but the master sergeants took a chance. Yeah, they took a chance and let us, go over there and earn our 5 level, I guess.
Yeah, like OJ, there's no better way than doing it, I guess. I'm glad now that there's a better process in place, because I feel like we definitely were like cowboys. I just remember not even having fucking comms with the Army, like the QRF is going out there, and like we're just like, well, I hope we don't lose them, because we do, we're fucked, because we couldn't call them on any radios or anything. But no, God rest Tim Barry's soul. I am gonna go head that way actually this week to his funeral. But that dude was a
right.
So when you look back on all your time, we don't have to talk about all the craziness, but we can talk about whatever you want. When you look back on your time as EOD and the things that you did, like, how's that make you feel? Like, do you enjoy it? Like, overall, it was awesome. Like,
So, I mean, a lot of people use that term, would I go back, would I change something? I wouldn't change anything. EOD was a job, but it's more than a job. It's lifelong friendships. It is memories. Are there things that I wish I hadn't seen or couldn't or could forget? Maybe. But like everything that happened, you could say it happened for a reason, but it also gives me a lesson. And so I wouldn't change any of it. I think the biggest value of EOD would be the friendships that I've made. I mean, I've one of my best friends I've known since kindergarten, but when he comes to visit or I go see him, I've known him since we were 5, and it's like this handshake side hug thing. But then, the U and the SB and, Hambone lives up the road, and my kids call him Uncle, and, Hamilton and I knew each other in school. We never deployed together, but like, we had a 2-year run while he was at Luke where, it's just, my kids call him Uncle, and my kids are now at that age. They're like, hey, why is, SB? Why does Uncle SB have brown skin, And it's like, well, he's Filipino, and they're like, yeah, but, if he's our uncle, that makes him your brother. I'm like, well, yeah, SB is my brother.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's like, I could have a 4-year relationship, or I could have a 37-year relationship. But, we all embrace the suck together. And it's just, like I said, over the next, 30 years, 40 years, if I make it to fucking 80, we'll still be telling the same stupid fucking stories about when you and I took the 3-wheelers and we're going down riding and you fucking dumped that bitch and went fucking Supermaning off of it,
I drove it back, put it back like nothing was wrong.
Yeah, we we turned the keys in, and then Bart was like, "Man, that other three-wheeler's running like
Kinda
shit." We're like,
wobbles.
"Yeah, we don't
It's
know."
like, oh, really? We're
Yeah,
running
it's
great
running great
earlier
when we
today.
rode it. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know what's going on with it. But no, I mean, I wouldn't change anything. You know, the career field has given me friendships. The knowledge that the career field required me to obtain has also helped me, you know, with my current job. It helped me land a job when I first got medically retired, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I had a daughter and an unborn son, and you know, my life was changing. I was going from getting paid on the 1st and the 15th to not knowing, but because I had an explosive background, and because Casey Pasco said, "Hey, there's a job, you should apply for it," and then Casey probably put in a good word, and then I went in and was able to use my knowledge to pass the interview. I think because of those situations, you know, I wouldn't say that I'd change anything. I wish I could have worn it all the way out till 20 years. I wish I could have been a chief. But at the same time, everything happens for that reason, and I can't bitch or complain. I you know, we got a pretty good life, and you know, just trying to figure out how to help the next generation and how to take care of the guys that aren't, you know, they're not handling some of the shit that happened as well. You know, just trying to always be there, you know?
Right. And I think that's the big thing. And I guess what really inspired me to start reaching out to people and just, I don't know, I really just want it to be normal to talk about shit, you know? I feel like there's a lot of people, and even reaching out to people in chat, like, some are like, I'll do it, but I'm not going to give you my real name, you know? And I'm like, that's fine if that's what you want to do, you know, because there's so many bad stigmas and stereotypes associated with PTSD, like whether it's a sign of weakness or, you know, it might have some sort of adverse effect on the career paths and stuff like that. And it's like, I really hate that. It pisses me off on a level I can't even explain that these people, and even like, I mean, when we came back from deployments, like we had to like check all the blocks, and if we didn't check all the blocks, then we weren't ever allowed to deploy again, you know, so we had to lie about the things that we were dealing with and the aggressions, and a lot of people did substance abuse and stuff like that. And now you look at it, and there's so many people that are just killing themselves, and it's like, holy shit. Like clearly what we were doing and how we were processing PTSD, I think it was a lot more reactive is wrong. You know what I mean? I think women need to be more aggressive and more proactive with it, as well as need to stop pretending it's something bad. Like I don't get it. Like, we went through some shit, you know. And one of the things that I love about EOD in my experience was it tested the limitations of what I thought I was capable of, like enduring and going through. And I mean, it's a bit of a catch-22 because it definitely like makes you not worry about the trivial shit as much, but like that, like that being able to overcome that level of adversity, I think really makes you a stronger person, you know. And then to come
Yeah.
back and not be able to talk about it, it's like I don't know, it's frustrating for me, and I want to make that normal. I want to like get people to like the ones that are suffering alone. I want them to know that hey, you're not alone. You know, it's like all of us, all of us that were over there or did anything similar. It's like we all have some. It impacts you, like in some variation. Some people not as much. Other people is a lot more. You know, and I think that there's a commonality between the people that are successfully dealing with it and the ones that aren't. And I just want to like show what the successful ones are doing so that others can hopefully improve the quality of their life.
Yeah, no, I think that I think society as a whole does a very poor job of looking at the mental health, and it started, you know, obviously back in our probably grandfather, great grandfather's days, where you know men were supposed to be cold and you know, just you know, tougher than nails. Which again, men should be protectors and men should be tough, but you know, you should be able to show emotion and not be judged. And then
Right.
in today's world, with the fact that this whole toxic masculinity thing, like
Mm-hmm.
I get a good amount of grief. I got two boys and a girl, and when they fall and they skin their knee, I don't run to them, and coddle them. I ask them, "Are you hurt? Or are you injured?" Because an injury means you can't continue on, and a hurt just goes away. So,
Yep.
like, you need to figure out what that is, and it's not on me to tell them whether they're hurt or injured. It's on them to tell me. And a lot of times, they'll be like, "I'm just hurt." I'm like, "All right, well, we could put some, we can clean it, put some Band-Aids on it, we put some cream on it, and you can go back and play, because that's what life is. An injury means we got to take a time out, and you're not going to be able to do this anymore." And and the fact that I make them come to me. There was one time that I've ran to my son, and and the funniest thing about it was I ran out to him. I was in protective mode, and within 5 minutes he's still crying because basically took a soccer ball. He was running full speed one direction. Another kid was running the other direction and kicked the soccer ball, and it lit him up. It decleated him. It was bad. And I ran out and grabbed him because I just figured there'd be blood and everything else. And no, he's got a hard head like his father. And but he was freaking out. And I got him to the sideline. I'm like, "Hey, you hurt or you're injured, because your team needs you, and I think that you're just hurt." And he's like, "It hurts." I'm like, "I got that." I'm like, "But you could keep playing." So he went back out on the field, and like the ref looked at me funny. All these other parents were like, "What the hell?" And then one of the dads came over and he's like, "That kid's tough." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm not here to raise a bitch. Like, I'm here to raise a tough kid. Like, this is what the future of my country needs, is toughness. Like, toughness with intelligence. Like, it's not all about brawn, but like he needs to be tough. Like, my boy needs to know that he's a boy and that he's tough. That's what he needs to know." And so yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't think it's wrong to be strong. I think it's all right. And trying to I get it being having emotional intelligence. That's one thing. That's totally different than being soft. Or sensitive. Like I think you can be a very strong individual as well as being emotionally intelligent enough to know that you're going through some shit, dealing with some stuff, and similar to what you're saying about hurt and injured. It's like it's okay to get hurt. Just dust yourself off and get afterwards. Take a moment, pause, and then let's go.
Yep. And the mental health thing, just as you stated, it's annoying how it's handled. It's annoying how there's a stigma. We sit there and want people to reach out. We want people to help, but then I mean, the Will Smith slapping the shit out of Chris Rock thing is literally the classic example. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he was protecting his wife, which honestly I don't think the joke was that bad. And again, I'm not in their relationship. Protecting his wife, but then they turn around and he's lost his mind.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he has. Did anybody reach out and ask him if he needed help? Like,
right?
I mean, the exact same woman on a nationally syndicated podcast told him that she cheated on him. Like,
yeah, and it was his fault or something along those lines. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, how can you sit there and, I don't know. That's, it is what it is. The court of public opinion is not friendly to people with mental conditions. That one of my big concerns is being rated for PTSD. They keep coming back to gun laws, and if you have a mental health condition, you shouldn't own a gun. And I'm like, I'm the person that you want to own guns. Like, if I was schizophrenic or bipolar, I probably shouldn't own guns. And if a dementia patient probably shouldn't own guns. And if I ever end up with dementia, I'll gladly hand my guns over. But just because I have PTSD or a quote unquote mental health condition doesn't mean I should be ineligible for owning a gun. There are situations that I don't like to be in due to PTSD, but it doesn't mean I'm going to shoot the place up. Like that's the stigma. Oh, only crazy people, and so PTSD, you're crazy. And it's like, no. We're not crazy. We're not crazy at all, but those are some.
That's one of my biggest fears. Yeah, with PTSD rating and the whole federal database and stuff like that. Like, I think if you follow it in a progressive fashion, that is the direction. I think we are going to get to that fork in the road eventually where they're going to try to remove guns from people that have PTSD. Whereas I may be speaking out of school, but I kind of feel like there's more of association with gun violence and medication and people who are on medication. I feel like I think I read some article like some insane percentage was all on some sort of prescription medication for depression. And, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, I think there's a bigger problem in that direction. And I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a time and a place for medication. I've taken it for like a week or two when I was in like some really dark places. But I don't know. In my opinion, to take it like it's a vitamin is dangerous. I feel like that's the easy way of dealing with emotions. And if everybody is on some sort of medication where they can't like actually process their emotions in a normal, natural way, then like at what point do you break away from that? At what point are you going to be able to deal with life in a normal way? I don't know. Like,
and I think the medication piece is also a laziness on behalf of the medical career field.
It's the easy way for sure, but I don't know to make it a permanent solution to a problem. I think it's so dangerous for people.
Yeah, like it's an easy button. And then the thing I think that drives me even more nuts is there's some other treatments out there that have shown great promise, but because they require marijuana, CBD, or something along those lines, they won't go to it. They won't use it. They won't authorize it. And I mean, my background. I'm never used drugs. I've never smoked. I've never drank. But the fact that I know a few vets that have started using marijuana medically in the states that they're allowed to, and they've gotten off of a lot of their antipsychotic medications, which are man-made. Like, I'm not the most religious person, but everything put on this earth was put on this earth for a reason. And if marijuana is there to help with some of these things that people are going through, then why are we not funding research? But instead we're funding research on their gender disorientation or what gender identity disorder. Like, can we focus on what's important here? And if smoking weed is the way to go and it helps, then let's go, and then let's get some long-term studies, because half the shit that they're feeding our vets or our brothers and sisters is addictive. And if they miss a dose or they run out of it or out of a prescription,
they lose their fucking minds. I've seen a guy. He missed his medication and was in a car crying for like 12 hours. And I was just like, holy shit, that's the worst level of withdrawals I've ever seen ever. And I've been in relationships where it was similar. They're like, hey, you can't just stop taking this drug. They're like, if you do it, you'll likely die. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy that you can't just be like, okay, I don't want this anymore, And I'm like, whoa. Like, to me, that's insane. And along the lines of the things that you were talking about, not just marijuana, but I think it's called Fantastic Fungi or whatever. It's a documentary on Netflix, and it goes into some of the old research in the 60s and stuff that they used to do with psilocybin, LSD, and ayahuasca. And like those molecular compounds are very similar to one another, and they have kind of the same effects. And they're showing how those would help break that emotional attachment or need for alcohol, drugs, like opiates. It was really beneficial, especially psilocybin. even like smoking cigarettes and stuff like that. So I think those are like realistic and options that we should definitely look more into for sure. And they're starting to receive a lot of funding finally federally again. And you could see places, I think, like Washington and Oregon and Washington, D.C. I think they have made mushrooms uh, legal. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting.
I
So
think
it'd be really cool to see.
everything Oregon. I think everything. You could use heroin
Yeah.
in Oregon. I think it's legal.
You know, I have a mixed bag of feelings on that. I think that there should be clinics for certain things, and if people want to do it, sure, let them go do it at the clinic because then you're not getting any fentanyl or anything crazy like that. But also give them the opportunity to be like, you don't do that level of drugs unless there's like severe emotional trauma within you, I think, or you like they feel the need for it. So then after they're done, provide them with like some sort of like real help, not just giving them drugs, but provide them with therapy, like if they want it, like, hey, this is, another alternative or whatnot. So I don't think legalization of all drugs is bad. It's just how it would be implemented. I don't think selling it on the side of the street, like, a drug dealer is the ideal way to do it. But I think there's progressive ways to improve how we deal with things like that. I mean, fuck, opium is legal in prescription form, has been forever. Now we have an opioid epidemic, and I know I've heard stories of people like in nurses, police officers who get addicted to opiates. It's just like it's insane. It's the most addictive thing that you
Yeah.
can really get your hands on, except for maybe heroin, which isn't heroin an opioid? Isn't it just
Well, the oxy and all that is a derivative of heroin. I mean,
right?
basically, it's all the same. It's all coming from the same thing, and that's why they're so addictive, and that's why
Yeah.
there's such an epidemic to it.
hmm
And that's one of the problems. And then, when the oxy and all that stuff was first coming out, they're like, oh, it's not addictive. It's a great painkiller, not addictive. Well, they were lying
Right.
about that. And they
100%.
actually, I think they settled a lawsuit last year where they were convicted or
Yeah,
whatever of
billions of dollars.
lying. Yeah,
Yeah, I
as
saw
they
that
should
too.
be.
Yeah, well, when I got blown up in Afghanistan, it kind of tweaked my back pretty bad, and the doctor was like, "Here, I'll just give you a lifetime prescription." And I was like, I'll just no thanks, because I was like,
Yeah.
I have an addictive personality as is, and it's like I see, certain aspects in like my family's history where it's like I don't want shit to do with that. You know what I mean? And it's crazy that
Yep.
that was the go-to. I'm like, what about like chiropractic? Like I'm sure that there's another alternative other than just giving me a whole bunch of oxycodone, but I don't know.
Yeah,
So
buddy.
on that topic, like mental health. So did you ever find a stage in your life where you felt like it was uncomfortable to talk about? Whether it was when you're in the military because you didn't want to like get kicked out, or did you ever feel like I don't want to be a bitch, I don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? And if you did have that, like what changed to where like you're like, fine, yeah, I'm all about it.
So I don't think that I ever didn't want to talk about it. I didn't think I had a problem for the longest time.
Right.
And then when I first went to go talk to a mental health counselor at Luke Air Force Base, I made my appointment and I went in and I wasn't really sure how it was going to go.
hmm
Obviously, it was mental health. I was a little worried about like what if I got back to the shop.
Yep.
And I walked in and it was an Air Force major that was he was my doctor, and so we were doing our little intake and we started talking, and then like I kind of just said, hey, I have this series of nightmares and this one recurring one, and it kind of ties back to this event. And he stops me and he's like, wait, you're in the Air Force. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, excuse me?
Right.
And he's like,
Yeah.
you're talking about combat, and you're talking about this, like, getting attacked, and you're talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. And he's like, you're in the Air Force. He's like, what were you doing outside, doing all this? And I'm like, excuse me? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm an EOD tech. I'm like, and so like, I literally I looked at this guy after the second time. He's like, how did you do all this? You were Air Force. He's like, this. He didn't say this sounds far fetched or that I'm lying, but like his body language and his attitude, he was like, you're lying, and I was like, dude, fuck this, so I'm out. And so I bounced. The thing that came, somebody called on my behalf. I don't remember who. They called the patient advocate, and the patient advocate called me and then convinced me to give it another go with a new doctor. And I was like, fuck no, I'm not doing that. I'm not talking, because I was not going to talk to anybody that wore the uniform. I just wasn't going to do it. Yeah. Because if you're going to call me a fucking liar, like, you can get fucking bent. And I ended up going back because I said I would. And I ended up with, his name is Dr. Cooter. I don't know where he's at anymore. But I met him. He's wearing a lavender purple shirt. And let's just say he has a limp. He's got a limp handshake. And I'm like, oh, God, this is not going to go over well. And he was by far the best mental health doctor I ever had, because he just sat there, he just listened, and then he quickly picked up that my battle with mental health was more of a challenge within myself. Mm-hmm. And so he would give me homework. He would say, okay, we're going to do this, but when you go home, you need to do this. And it was homework that I not only could educate myself on, but I could challenge myself on. And it made me a better human, I guess, because I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. I didn't want to admit that I couldn't handle the problem, but I needed the help. But he also knew that I don't necessarily need to talk to somebody 5 days a week. I need to talk to somebody once a week, but I need to be able to help myself, because that's how my personality is.
Yep.
And
I can relate a lot.
That
was the hardest part for me too.
I made leaps and bounds with that guy. He also did a non-approved treatment therapy called EMDR, and some people say it sucks, some people say it's great. I'm one of the guys that says
I did that one.
Yeah, it's effective. I like it better than cognitive behavioral therapy and prolonged exposure. I hate both of those. Like, they just don't work for me. Yeah. But EMDR worked for me. And it sucks because the VA doesn't approve EMDR as a treatment. So, I'm in a weird holding pattern, but like Dr. Cooter gave me some tools and some information that has allowed me to continue to self-study, I don't want to say treat, but self-heal, to be cognizant of what's going on, and like figuring it out.
Yeah. What kind of things in your life were you experiencing that really ultimately, I guess, let you know that you had some shit going on, that you needed to do something different to get help?
So I would say that nightmares were the first step. I had some dreams, that was kind of normal. Mm-hmm. I think the part that I needed help with, or that I really realized I need to seriously get this shit figured out, was my lack of passion for just living. Yeah. Not that I wanted to hurt myself, not that I wanted to kill myself, just hanging out and going to a football game was no longer enjoyable. Right. Getting out into the wilderness, camping and hiking, something that I grew up doing, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to hike. I didn't want to fish. I didn't want to backpack. I didn't want to do anything. I just kind of wanted to not do anything that I had grown up doing. The lack of, I guess just the lack of joy.
Yeah.
You know, kind of always seeing things in a negative light.
Mhm.
You know, I've always considered myself to be a realist. Like, I can look at a situation and be like, all right, you know, here's the good, bad, and the indifferent. But looking at a situation and only seeing the bad, or anticipating the bad. I had gotten into a relationship in late 07, and she moved down to be with me in 08. I deployed. I came back, and I mean, she's awesome. I'm married to her now, but I was horrible. Like, I came back and I was I was trying to push her away. I was literally trying to destroy my life, and that is not that is not who I was or am. And I mean, I was just mean. Like, yeah, I couldn't understand how I could say, "Oh, I love you," and then say some of the things that I said, like, or do the things that I did. When I finally decided to go get help, I had evidently had a nightmare. I had woken her up. I had, you know, evidently I checked her vitals. I told her to stay down. I told her not to move.
Mhm.
And then I had actively cleared my home with a firearm. And I came to when my German Shepherd ran into me. It ran his cold nose in the back of my leg, and all of a sudden I'm downstairs with a gun, and I have no idea where I am. I don't know exactly what's going on, but the gun's loaded. We're ready to rock and roll. And then, you know, when I came back into the bedroom, she is absolutely fucking terrified.
Right.
And I knew right then and there, it's like, okay, like I can't do this, and I can't afford to obviously put her through anymore, possibly hurt her in one of these nightmares. And so I decided to start my journey, and then I decided I was going to be pretty vocal about it. I wasn't going to hide it from the shop. I knew I had a security clearance. You know, I heard rumors that it affected assignments.
Yep.
But I've also considered myself to be a leader of men. And if the leader of men is going to go get mental health, I was hoping that my guys would be willing to go get help, or at least if I learned something in my sessions, that if they were to open up and talk to me, we could have that conversation. And so I was very vocal about getting help full time, and about there's a book, and I think I've probably sent it to 4 or 5 of our friends and said, hey, it may not work for you, but it helped me, and it's given me some tools, so just check it out. And I would say that was my by far defining moment when I knew that I needed help. And there was comments, you know, obviously, you know, our mothers know us better than anybody else. And, you know, my mom has said, you know, you're not the same, you know, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, of course I'm not the same. I'm older and I've seen different things. I'm not the same. But, you know, when your mom tells you that you're not the same, and then, you know, the look on her face is you're not the same in happiness, but you're not the same in sadness, like something's wrong. And I was like, you know, so yeah, my culminating event was by far, you know, and I don't know what the hell got me clearing my house. I don't know what the hell it was. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't know how it all went down. I just know that, you know, my girlfriend at the time was scared absolutely shitless. Yeah. And, you know, I just realized I needed, and I was meaner than hell to her, and she wasn't going to leave. And I quickly realized that if she's going to stick this out, then I need to fix myself. Because she saw something in me, and I needed to make it right. And so,
Right.
I stuck my path, and that's kind of, and it's I don't want to say it's an everyday battle, but it's constantly there. Obviously, there's good days and there's bad days. But that's kind of where, that's where it started, I guess.
Yeah. What was the name of that book?
The book is Waking the Tiger, and it's written by Peter Levine. I will tell you this, it's not the most interesting read. It's actually a challenging read. But there's a few exercises that they recommend in that book that when shit gets a little crazy and I can't necessarily talk to my counselor, or I don't know, just like those quote unquote bad days, every once in a while, just trying out a couple of those exercises really like helps out. Like I don't want to say it recenters, but it brings me back down to more of a normal atmosphere, I guess.
What kind of, I don't know, if you don't feel like sharing, it's fine. Which ones in particular really work well for you? Because I know I have a routine, and you say, like, it's always there for you. It's there for me too. Mine's a little bit different. It's a bit darker, and that's why I never owned guns. It's not so much that I go clearing the house, it's because I would check out, and it's been a struggle over the years, and that's ultimately what pushed me to start getting help.
The exercise is to turn your back to the shower head, and then to tilt your head back, and then have the water hit the brow, the brow of your forehead, like where your forehead and your hair meet, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal of it is to basically concentrate to where you can feel the individual water drops hitting your head. And it sounds hokey as fuck. And the first time I tried it, I was like, yeah, this is fucking bullshit. But I kind of use it now. So that, like, it just kind of, I would almost say it's a form of meditation. It really
That's
is.
what I
You
was
have
thinking.
to.
Like when you're saying that,
You have to.
in my mind, it's like, it's almost making you be present in that moment, which is the exact same thing as
Yeah.
meditation in my mind. Or
You
like,
have to. You have
I
to.
have people that are
You have to take.
religious, and they do that like with prayer or like praying on the scripture, like all of those things. Like I feel like all have like a common thread of being present in the moment. Even the ayahuasca and mushroom trips that I hear people talk about, and it's like, okay, that just makes them like really introspective to where like they're present in the moment and they're able to evaluate themselves. So I think like all these have like a commonality for sure.
Yeah. And so it makes me, slow down the breathing, take some deep breaths. I really got to concentrate. And then I really just have to, I don't know, I guess kind of let things go. And then, to feel the individual water droplet, you feel the heat and the cold, the splash, like it's like, I would say it's more of a meditation.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing the book kind of brought to my attention was, what am I living every moment of every day for? And for the longest time, it was for the thrill of the job, to defeat that IED, to deny the terrorists, to keep people safe, to quote unquote be the hero, right? We throw the term hero around quite a bit. And one of my struggles was when I left the service, for 13 years, I knew what I was going to wear every day. And I had my name, I had my rank, I had my stature on my sleeve. The level of my badge was commensurate with my knowledge, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, I'm wearing a Nike polo and a pair of khakis, and I'm assigned
Just
to an
another guy.
office, and I'm an employee ID number, right?
Yeah.
And
There's
like
that.
I have I'm doing X, Y, and Z to make sure that my 6-month employee review is good and my 1-year annual review is good, so I can get a raise. Not to get promoted, not to I'm working that 9 to 5 to pay my bills, not to go save a life, not to I don't know, I guess make a difference, right? And so
Right.
that was that. I was like, I'm just I could go a whole week and never see my boss, essentially. Like, that kind of threw me off because, we had our morning meetings every day, hey, this is what we got to get done, get this done, so that was weird. And so the book, I was like, okay, so I'm not, my Monday is not dedicated to robot training the next airman or inventorying an X1. So I had to make a fundamental shift in what is my goal. And I found that the best thing for me was to be a good father
Mm-hmm.
and to be there for my kids. And so, every time that negative thought or that darkness starts to creep back in, it's just a matter of understanding that, if I make a stupid decision, that decision creates a darkness in my children.
Yep. In a sense,
And
I
so,
feel like I resonate with this a bit because in the military, like I had purpose. We had purpose. Like our purpose was so obvious, it couldn't be more obvious. Like we were there to do a job and our job was badass. I enjoyed the shit out of it. And then once I got out, I didn't have purpose. Like absolutely none. And it sounds like that's exactly your purpose went from saving lives to saving your kids' lives in the sense of being a good father. So you give them a path, like you give them a beacon of light of like, hey, this is what you should be, and I'm here for you, kind of thing, and that's fucking amazing.
yeah. And as I have, there's other things. When it gets loud, I'll try to remove myself. I find solace in the quiet. But the solace in the quiet is only good for so long. The solace resets me, but I've got to live my life. I can't live in the quiet because then the quiet becomes dark. So, I'm trying to get back. One of my defining, I guess, moments. I planned this gigantic trip. I was going to walk 500 miles from the Oregon border to the Canadian border along the Pacific Crest Trail. I read an article. There was an Army guy who was working for his dad's best friend, was having blow-ups, and it was like, yeah, I know what this guy's going through. And his dad's best friend said, hey, look, you can't keep doing this shit. You got to figure it out. And his dad's best friend said, go hike the Appalachian Trail. Just get on it, go hike it, find out who you are, like get back to the basics, and I will pay you. And so you don't got to worry about shit. And this guy went out and he hiked the Appalachian Trail. He wrote a book. I don't remember the book, and I have yet to buy it. I do want to read it. But I read this article and I was like, I could do that. And so I saved up a bunch of leave, and I want to do the whole Pacific Crest Trail. Like, it's on my bucket list of things to do. Unfortunately, I've got 3 kids and a job, and I need to pay bills. So I can't, it takes 6 months to do the Pacific Crest Trail. And people, want to section hike it, and I don't want to section hike. I want to start, and I want to go, and I want to, just, I don't know, live the 6 months and just figure out. And if I don't finish it, I don't finish it. I think that the other defining thing for me was I also realized I don't have to see everything all the way through. So I planned this trip, and I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. I was weighing my gear. I was packaging food to figure out how many calories I needed per day. I was testing this sleeping pad, and I was testing this hammock, and I was testing this backpack. I have so much hiking shit, it's ridiculous. This water filter versus a different water filter.
Right. Yeah.
I got everything settled, and I took off on this trail, and man, we got like 33 miles in, and my hammock tore, which is weird because I had tested the shit out of it. It was rated for everything, but it just tore.
Was
And
it the REI?
initially, like, huh?
Was it the REI, the one that fits in like a little puka, like a little pouch?
No. So I
Hmm.
researched hammock companies. It's made by a company in Colorado called War Bonnet. They make hiking hammocks. They're amazing. I actually own like 4 of them. So it's weird. I had what's called a double layer hammock. Double layer protects you from mosquitoes a little bit better.
Yep.
And it wasn't both layers that ripped. So it was the outer layer that ripped on my hammock, not the inner layer, not the first layer that I was touching. It was the outer layer that tore.
Yep.
And I still could lay in it, but it was one of those things like, man, I don't feel as safe and secure. And it was really weird because it was rated for like 375 pounds. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near 375. Like, why did my hammock tear? And I ended up that night, because I didn't feel safe in my hammock, I was laying on the ground on a piece of Tyvek. Because I was in a hammock, I didn't have a sleeping pad. And as I'm laying there, it's cold and it's miserable. And, you know, I have 467 miles to go. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to see my wife and kids in 3 days. I'll give them my hammock. They'll send it off. They'll bring me a replacement hammock or whatever. And then I'll meet them 4 days later at this point. And then, you know, like I'll just keep continuing.
Yep.
And like the sun came up. I was cold. I was like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there. Yeah, I've got 30 days. I got 30 days off. My wife's running around Washington and Idaho and Oregon with my 2 kids. And I'm like, why am I not taking 30 days to live my life with them? And so I fucking swallowed my pride because I was like, I don't need to walk this 500 miles. Like, I'm like, I need to be with my kids. And so I swallowed my pride. I found a logging road. I actually had no idea where the fucking logging road was going to go because it wasn't on my map. And I fucking walked that bitch out. I found civilization. I called my wife and said, hey, come pick me up. And so I got fucking picked up. And then I had probably one of the better vacations I've ever had. I took my kids to see Ken Griffey. Yeah. I took my kids to see Ken Griffey Jr.'s number retired in Safeco, a stadium that I watched. I went to a baseball game. I went to a baseball game with a metric shit ton of people, and I got to see a childhood hero's number retired. I went crab fishing, something I grew up doing. I took my kids, you know, I got to show my kids how to tell the difference between a boy crab and a girl crab. And we went crabbing, and I sat with my aunt and my uncles, and we had a crab feast. And I got to do things that I remember fondly growing up. And then I was like, I made the right decision. Now I still want to go hike. I still want to go finish it. Just because it's just beautiful. Like and on top of that, it's 2,600 miles, and I want to walk 2,600 miles just to say I fucking did it. Right.
There's a lot of challenges.
Yeah, exactly. You know, hell, I did a Tough Mudder when they told me I was never going to run again in my life. And I'm like, well, I might not run the whole thing, but I'll run a majority of it, and I'll get it done. And, you know, I've done 3 Tough Mudders because you tell me I can't do something, I'll find a way to do it. So, yeah, eventually I'd like to go back on the Pacific Crest Trail and hike it again. It's just a matter of, you know, the right time. So I also do some hiking out here, which is weird because it's Texas. It's flat. You can fly when you hike out here because there's no elevation. You can you could just crush miles. Like it's I hiked like 13 miles in 5 hours. No, I started at 7 and 4 hours. I did 13 miles in 4 hours down here. I was just flying, and it's just different. But I got into hiking, and mental health side of it, just getting back to what I loved. And I guess the biggest thing for me, man, is just the peace and the quiet.
Yeah.
Like, I think, but not staying there forever. Like, I live outside of one of the bigger cities in America, but when I walk out, it's quiet. I can see stars. It's just quiet.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the quiet.
So,
because the rest of my life is not. I have a bunch
right,
of
because
kids.
you got 3 kids and a wife and dogs and yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something earlier that really, like, I guess I can relate with. It was kind of like, in my opinion, like, life went from beautiful and like happy and fun shit to, like, there's some stuff that happened, and then before I could even notice, it was like I was living in like a really blah world. Everything was gray. There wasn't anything really I cared about or I wanted to do. The things I used to love doing were like irrelevant. And at what stage, like, did that all start coming back to for you? Like, was it immediately when you started seeking help? Was it a couple of months? Like, at what stage? Like, how quickly did all that start coming back?
I would say there was a couple of different times. When I first started going to mental health counseling, I'd say the second or third session, I started to feel a little looseness in my shoulders. I didn't feel like I was I didn't feel like I was uptight. I didn't feel I'd say I was still angry, but I didn't feel, I guess, as mad at the world. When I transitioned out, it was on that hike that I prepped. I prepped so hard. I mean, I knew every water point for 500 miles. And then to fail was so bothersome to me that I thought about just sleeping on the ground for the next fucking 500 miles or 467 or whatever. But as I walked off that mountain, and then my wife came down to pick me up, this little blue-eyed, blonde-haired girl was so happy to see me. It had been 3 days, but so happy to see me. I got this little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy that, it was funny. He fell out of my mom's trailer. Like, we arrived late at night. We were camping in my mom's trailer, and then we were going to hit the trail like the next day or 2 days later. And he pushed on the screen and tumbled down the stairs and like scraped up his face as a 1-year-old. So he's got like a scratched up face and everything, but he's got a goofy ass fucking grin, and he just wants to hang out with dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, that brought it back. I would say that my biggest hiccup is when I took off on that hike. I was so excited to finish and see how proud they were. But when I failed, they didn't give a shit. They didn't care. They were still happy to see me. And one of the things that I think I struggle with more is I want to show them the things that I enjoy, but they're so young. They don't, like, there's some things they can't do. Like, I want to go hiking right now. And I'm sure that my daughter could probably hang, but like, my 2 boys, they got short legs. They're not going to, they're not going to be able to hike, like we might get 2 miles out of them and be able to camp somewhere or whatever, but, we're not going to be able to crush miles. I want to do 10 miles a day kind of thing, hike for 12 hours. So, I struggle with like, let's do this, and that's one of the reasons, I've loved baseball and softball my whole life. That's one of the reasons I'm coaching baseball. And, you know, my boy could be, he could be one of the best ever, but he also might not love it as much as I do. But there's times, you know, like when I'm on the baseball field and I'm coaching and, you know, it's hit to him and he's not paying attention. And I'm like, dude, what? I want to like come unglued, right?
Right.
Like, oh my God, you know? But then, you know, over Easter week, we didn't have practice or games. And on Saturday, you know, we're driving back from Easter service and he says, hey, Dad, you know, like when do we get to have baseball practice? Because I want to get back into practicing some baseball. And I'm like, dude, like, you don't know how happy that makes me. Like,
Right.
you know, I'm like, we could practice tomorrow, like first thing in the morning in the backyard, you know, or you could wait till Tuesday during actual baseball practice, like whatever you want to do, you know. And, but, you know, it's just, it's the, I guess it's the little victories, the little moments, you know?
Yeah. And those mean more now because it seems like life has color again, you know? You're back to seeing it as it is. And that's awesome. So
Yeah.
just gonna
And
summarize.
seeing their joy
Yeah.
in life, like understanding that it's like, I always think something bad's going to happen still, but understanding that they don't have any clue. And so they just live their life the best way they can live it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So if you're gonna, I don't know, have a moment with someone who's struggling, or even go back in time to yourself, what would you tell yourself to get started? Is there anything you'd say, anything you'd set yourself up for success and be like, hey, this is what helped me out, and this is what I'd recommend?
So, I mean, I have, I guess, a couple bits of advice. One, I would tell people that you're never going to find the answer at the bottom of a bottle. I know you and I have had this conversation over the years. And, you know,
It's a
we
nice
have
way of
friends.
calling me a lush.
No,
But no,
but
yeah,
I remember, I think that you and I had a bet on the 30-day no drinking thing.
this was in my
And
prime. Right. This is like back in the day when we were still in. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
that.
yeah. And I saw, you know, I mean, so it's different for me because I've never drank. So I don't understand the joy of drinking. I see the misery of drinking the next day when, you know, you'd come to my apartment and be like, I'm never drinking again. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
that'll last until fucking 4 o'clock tonight or whatever. But yeah, but my, you know, we had that bet and in that 30 days, you could see so many things change in you, the motivation, the energy levels, like all of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I understand that alcohol is a depressant and, you know, a lot of people use it to mask things. So, you know, I'd say you're never going to find your answers at the bottom of a bottle. And I thoroughly believe that. If you want to drink, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you're drinking socially, I'm okay with that. I've never said that people shouldn't drink, but if you're trying to hide a problem and you're trying to bury it under alcohol, it's the best swimmer in the world that's always going to find its way through. The advice I would have is tell the truth, but you have to be honest to yourself.
Yeah, that's where it starts.
If you don't want to talk to a professional because you're worried about your career, then find that guy, that your girl, your friend, your what, like your ride or die, the guy that's got your back no matter what, doesn't matter what time it is, but you gotta be honest with them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to mention anybody, but we have a mutual friend that hit a low moment and he reached out to me and we had that conversation and now he's thriving and he's doing well. And that is a victory. And
yeah, 100%.
You know, if you're worried, I don't want to put my burdens on somebody. Trust me, if you decide to take that next step because that burden is too much for you to bear, you're passing that burden onto that guy that said he's there for you.
Exactly.
So like make a phone call. I would just, my advice, you're never going to find your answer at the bottom of a bottle. Be honest and be truthful to yourself. And then, as cliche as it sounds, we're not alone. Like, if you think that ending it makes it better for everybody else, the world is a better place when you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to grow old and have nobody to tell stupid stories to,
Right? I want to tell the same 5 stories every day with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that, and I think it's the thing that I'm seeing that's really a common thread is communication with people who, are there and going to be supportive. Everybody's got one, and if they don't, that's what I hope to build with this sort of platform. To let you know, there's other motherfuckers out here that have been through some stuff, and you just want to, chew the fat, and we'll chew the fat with you for sure. And then on the drinking thing, I see after living that type of lifestyle for a while, as well as with other substances, what it does is it severs the emotional attachment to the pain and trauma that you're living, even if it's only for a night. But the problem with alcohol, in my experience, is it comes back 10 times as bad the next day. Maybe not at first, but like definitely that's why I never drink multiple. Like I might have a drink or two, here and there, but I won't back it up anymore, like days on end, because that's definitely, I don't know if alcohol just hits me a little bit different than other people, but it depresses the shit out of me after about 2 days of it. So I steer clear of that. And then something I'd recommend to absolutely everyone who deals with some sort of trauma is I had a good friend who in Puerto Rico did a year sobriety. And, doing a year sobriety is not hard when you're in Afghanistan, and or Iraq.
Yeah.
Like, you actually have to make effort to get booze. But if you do a year sobriety in the real world where you have access to it at any given moment, my goodness, that changed my life, because I saw him do it and I saw how, like, he didn't have habits anymore, because, like, that taught him a level of discipline that was, like, I impressed the shit out of me, because he used to smoke cigarettes too. He quit smoking, because that showed him that he had the ability, that he was in control. And then I guess it was now, it had to be like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I did the same thing. And I was like, fuck it, this is when I want to do it. I did a year sobriety, and I think I ended up doing about 17 months of it, And ever since then, it's like
Yeah.
I've never had that emotional attachment to where I felt like, I mean, I'd have a bad day at work. I'd come home and be like, man, I want a beer, No, like I don't want a case of beer. It's just like I wanted a beer or two, It's like I felt like I needed it. And after that, I've never had that feeling ever in my life. It's like, yeah, I might have a moment where, like, hey, there's a social environment. I want to go have some drinks. So, like, let's go do it. Especially when you're around some of those old boys. You know what I mean? You gotta start talking story.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'll freaking polish off some drinks with anybody in that situation, but just not make sure it's not a habit. Habits are bad. If it's a bad habit, you gotta shake that. And we all know what we're supposed to be doing. And it's like, if it's really impacting us in a bad way, it's like, hey, fucking pony up. We've done harder shit than not drinking. So put it down for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess my final little piece is, I don't like the D on post-traumatic stress disorder.
I don't either.
Post-traumatic stress, it doesn't have to dictate your life. You can learn to live and adapt. I had during some of my therapy, I started seeing a speech therapist because I thought I was losing my mind, memory.
Mm-hmm.
I was meeting people and I'm like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Like, I've never met you. And they're like, dude, we were in Iraq together. And I'm like,
Have you looked into TBI?
I looked into what?
TBI.
Yeah. So I have a diagnosed TBI. But I also, the the speech therapist kind of gave me a bit of advice. So she would quiz me. She'd feed me information, then she'd quiz me, and then I'd go home. I'd come back, and she'd quiz me again. And I was getting all of the stuff right. She's like, well, you're not an idiot. I'm like, I never said I was an idiot. I just said that there's people I know from high school, but I don't know who the fuck they are anymore. Like, I ran into a guy shooting pool back home on leave, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And I thought he was a nice guy, and so we're talking and we're hanging out, and I've played pool with this guy for probably a better part of an hour. And he's like, man, I haven't seen you since graduation. And I looked at him like, we graduated together?
Yeah.
He's like, you don't remember me? And like, he knew all this shit. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But the speech therapist informed me that it's not that I am necessarily an idiot or forgetful or my brain is scrambled. It's that there's just certain things that your brain's going to hang on to and what it deems the important parts in your life. And that memory from high school was not as important as the day that I got hit by the VBIED kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I remember the date, the time, the smell, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot this kid that I spent 4 years in high school, and that's the part that I think a lot of, people get inside their head thinking, oh my God, I can't remember who that is, or I don't remember this. Like, I struggle with it, and it does make me angry that I don't remember all these people, but your brain's going to prioritize what it deems super important for you. And it may be that person that you forgot about wasn't super important as the things that you've stayed alive, that you've lived through, that you've done.
Right.
And so I would say that build those new memories that are so important to you and hang on to them. And eventually, it's not a disorder. It's just stress. And stress is part of our lives. We live
we are stressed.
We live in a stressful world. It's even more stressful now because everything's expensive and there's shortages and there's, you can't be this and you can't be that and you got to call somebody them or they or it or, whatever. Like, it's stressful. But understand that you can maintain and handle a level of stress. It's not a disorder unless you let it become a disorder and let it dictate every action of your day.
Yep.
Don't ever let 10 seconds ruin your day. And so, remove yourself from that situation, meditate, breathe, call, like just, I don't know, man, like, I just live life because it's great and it will be, you'll see tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. You're not broke, living through a traumatic situation doesn't break people, it might make you feel that way, but it's normal. Like, that's what happens. You'd be a psychopath if some of the things that you've seen him did didn't make you feel some sort of negative emotions because it's traumatic, that's normal.
True, exactly.
But awesome, dude. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up. I think that's awesome in with a little chit chat. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, buddy.
And I just hope, like, maybe not everything is gonna work for somebody else, but maybe one or two. Someone's like, "Fuck yeah, let's try that out." And then, yeah, I guess the only other thing I was gonna go for it.
I think a little bit of time in nature would help out a lot of people too.
Yeah, that was really my jam. I was trying to, like, once I separated, with my ex, I didn't know what I liked because I'd spent so long trying to make sure that person was happy. You know what I mean? That it was like, well,
Yeah.
shit, I used to like to travel. So I went to the Philippines and I went to Manila and I was like, nope, this is not where I need to be. Like, it was fucking chaos. And it was just like dirty poverty. Like, there was crazy shit everywhere. And I was like, I messed up here. And then my next one, I went to Alaska. And I think I drove 1,000 miles and hiked something like 200 miles. And I was like, yes, this is more my speed. So yeah, I think nature and just taking a little mental break, getting out there, like, be alone with yourself. I think that's so important, like, take time to be like, because when I first started meditating, it was like my mind was fucking chaos, you know? Like there was so much noise in that head, it was like insane. But then after you slowly like spend some time reflecting on what's going on, you're like, oh, okay, so there's like 10 things that I need to be fixing and working on. Like, boom, when you knock all those out, like eventually that noise gets quiet, you know, it's not as chaos. And then stress levels go down and everything. Like I know, like I start feeling a burn in my stomach. It's like, okay, I'm trying to ignore some shit. So I take a moment and I'm like, what's bothering me? And be like, oh, okay, it's this. Knock it out. And then after that, I'm back to normal, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I just, yeah, I also found that I got this derpy fucking dog. He's pretty good at,
Dogs are amazing. And there's a
yeah,
organization, I don't remember the name of it at the moment, but you can sign up for one of those, I don't know, PTSD dogs. Those are pretty cool. I don't know. I signed up for it. It's like a 2 year wait. Figure by 2 years, maybe I'll be in a better position where I can have a dog. Because right now it's like I travel too much. You know, they spend more time in a kennel than it would anything. So I'm like, yeah, maybe now's not the best time. But eventually, it'll be pretty cool.
there's a group started by a Navy SEAL. Supposedly horses are even better than dogs,
Oh, that's
and it's
right.
like
He was on.
heroes and horses or something.
Yeah.
Man, I want to get involved with them too. But they have a program that is like 42 days long or something, and like you start it and you basically you progress through the program, and you got to go through each section to get to the next section. And I just don't have 42 days to leave. I need to find a job that I can take like a month fucking off.
Yeah. No.
That's
No,
what
I
I
think
need.
that'd be awesome too. His name's Mike Fink. He was on Jocko recently. I wrote it down because I was going to look into that a little bit more too.
Going out to Charleston for a sailing thing with Warrior Sailing on Thursday
Yeah.
through Sunday.
Yeah.
And Ben Poacher, well, Corey Capes is a logistics guy, but Ben Poacher is one of the guys that runs that program.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to talk to them. I don't think it would be as long, but I'm going to talk to them and see if they're willing. And there's actually, I'm hoping he's there. There's a guy named, his last name is Burge. He's a former Army guy, but he's fucking awesome, dude. Him and I met at the Regatta for Hope, and it's funny, we became friends, and then I posted a fundraiser for Warrior Sailing, and Chris Jackson actually says, hey, I've heard great things about this Warrior Sailing program from somebody else. And I'm like, what? And so I clicked on Jackson's comment, and I was like, well, who was it? And then Burge, James is his name. James goes, oh, you know Winger? And so Burge was an Army guy. He did security for Jackson. Jackson and him have been talking, and he was like, dude, check out this Warrior Sailing. And then I put up a fundraiser for Warrior Sailing, and I meet Burge at the Warrior Sailing thing. And then Chris Jackson's like, I've heard nothing but good things about these guys. And then, Jackson and I go back quite a ways too. And I'm like, how fucking small world. So Burge is actually moving a sailboat right now from Chesapeake Bay down to Charleston. And I'm going to be in Charleston on Thursday. So I'm hoping I get to see him. But dude, it's crazy. It's crazy how small the world is. But I'm going to talk to Ben and Corey. If anything, they could at least talk to their mission statement. Because I got to tell you, dude, like I'm telling you, you should. I'll send you the link. You should apply for Warrior Sailing. I'm not going to say that it's the most life-changing thing I've done, but man, it's. Yeah, shut up. You used to be a swimmer. Shut the fuck up. You
I know. I was always so good at swimming because there was either a shark or alligator chasing me in my head.
Well, guess what? You're fucking sailing on a boat. There's a shark or an alligator. Well, not an alligator,
I know.
but there's sharks. But yeah, I will talk to them, and then I'm obviously going to meet some people. There's generally there's a guy named Sammy. I don't know if he would speak, but I've done 3 events with him, and he's got quite the story. But I'll see if some of them guys want to reach out and talk. And so we'll we'll get the connections going. But I'll definitely talk to Mike. Mike Mack is his name. I'll reach out to him.
No, that'd be
And
awesome. Just give them my number. Tell them to hit me up. The thing that I'm looking for organizations, because I know that there's a lot of organizations that don't want to like speak too deep or like get into the weeds of like anything super crazy. But for them, it would be like I would imagine like a 10 to 30 minute conversation. Just be like, explain what your mission is and like what you guys do, like success stories, stuff like that. And just like really get
yeah,
them in contact. And then once I shoot out the podcast and whatnot, I want to do a little blog and it'll link all the links to their websites on there. So it's more just, I guess, I'd be doing free advertisement ish, but if it helps one person, then fuck, that's what we're doing it for.
that's exactly. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll reach out. I'll start making some contacts.
Sweet. I'm going down to Phoenix, I think Thursday, and me and Lo are going to Thornberry's
Okay.
thing, and then after that I'll be at the memorial, I think. Just go say hi to some peeps and see how everybody's going.
All right. Well, if you continue that trip, I'll be back in Texas all of May. Well, not necessarily. Now I have to go to a funeral in Oregon or something. But we'll be around if you want to extend a day. We got a gigantic room, and you are obviously more than welcome. You just got to
Come
deal
say
with my
what's up.
children.
I know, right? That'd be awesome.
And well,
I
I mean,
appreciate it, man.
you could stay at Bones' house, but he has children too.
I know. I don't know. I love all y'all's kids. They're so much fun. Like the thing is with Hammond, I have to like bring donuts, even if it's even if I stay with you, I got to take them donuts just to totally wreck their meals and make them all fat and make them happy. Like Lincoln still calls me the donut man. I love it.
Nice.
hmm
All right, buddy. Well, it was great talking, and I hope this is what you needed. And if you need anything
Yeah,
else,
absolutely.
give me a holler.
I just need to get more people. I think I'm up to like 20 something now, which is solid. It's about almost half a year's worth. And the thing is, I want to give it. I'm shooting for 56, one solid year, and then reevaluate to see if it's beneficial. So yeah, just
Word.
keep spreading the word. And then once I get the
All right, man.
logo and social media stuff like finalized, I'll shoot you links. And then after that, just appreciate a follow. That'd be solid.
Of course. Of course. Got you.
Awesome. You have an awesome day. Thanks so much.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.